become a chartered corporate governance professional and also to become a chartered corporate or company secretary. And I'm a fellow of the Institute, as of many of the people on the call today.
Me too.
And very privileged to be part of this webinar today. I think a few people's mics are not muted. Arij, if you could please mute those. Thank you. That's great. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Abir, who will provide us with an update on the most recent Halkma webinar talking about the SCA regulation changes.
It will be my pleasure. Hello, everybody. I'm Abir Helwanji. I'm working with Halkma Institute recently as a corporate governance manager. I will just brief you quickly on a webinar that was taking place last week with ESCA regarding the new regulation. A lot of insights has been happened last week, and then I will brief you on that so you will gain some information as well. Okay, can you see the screen? Rob, if you could confirm. Okay, thank you so much.
Confirmed.
I will be very quick on that so we can enjoy the discussion later on. I'll just want to highlight to everybody that the official version of the guide is the Arabic one. The English translated document, which is not official yet by ESCA, although it is available on the website. But please, for any variation or differences, the Arabic is the one which will be prevail. So be careful if there's any confusion, just get some Arabic help. The provisions of the new regulation has been taken in place as per the provisions of the Federal Decree number 32 of year 2021, along with other comments and feedback that has been received from the market, insurance companies, banks, organizations, and a lot of questions has been, collected by ESCA during the year from 2020 once they issued the first regulation. So they gather all these questions, they answer it, and then they amend the regulation to make it very clear to all our board secretaries and corporate governance in the market. Let's go quickly on the key amendments that have happened on the new regulation. I just highlighted in bold the main things that all the board secretaries and corporate governance officers, they need to look at. The first important thing is that the board secretary functions has been a little bit amended. So now the board secretary should report directly to the board, same like before. He is still independent, he or she is still independent from the management. This is what is confirmed by ESCA last week, although they delete this word, but the board secretary is still independent from the management. And then the qualifications has been amended recently. So there is no a specific university degree now. They just need the board secretary to be qualified, that he needs to demonstrate competency, experience, smart, of course, dealing with many stakeholders, board members. The other section, the new one, is related to article number 12, which is the induction training and board evaluation. The report of the annual evaluation needs to be now incorporated in the corporate governance report. So once the corporate governance report is issued, you need to brief under the board formation. You need to brief a little bit regarding the training that has happened to the board members, along with the independent external consultant if have happened during the year. So they want a brief of the training that have happened to the board. Other confirmation that ESCA make it very, very important is regarding the board meeting, which they noticed during the last couple of years that some of the companies or some of the board of the companies are not receiving the invitation of the meeting properly before a week or before 5 days as per the charter. So this was a main point which they emphasize today on the new regulation. They emphasize on the importance to send the invitation along with the agenda and the documents, of course, to all board members. Don't exclude anyone, to all board members. And then to give the board members sufficient time to read and be ready for the meeting. So this was one of the main concerns that they highlighted during last week. Of course, they provide some insights on the transactions with the related parties, on the obligation of the board, General Assembly. The invitation to the General Assembly now It's almost same like before, but they just remove publishing it in the newspapers. So nowadays, it's not required to be published in 2 daily newspapers. They are trying to save the companies from extra costs, which is really not necessary during this period, especially like who's reading newspapers now, everything is on website and social media. So this has been removed from the new regulation. A lot of amendments has happened on the duties of the audit committee. They add a lot of new requirements. The main important was is related to the reporting. So they are asking now the audit committee to issue an annual report at the end of the year. And this annual report needs to be incorporated as well in the corporate governance report. So the requirements needs to be implemented on the next year corporate governance report 2025. During this year to the end of 2024, the audit committee needs to issue the annual report, and this needs to be included in the coming year 2025. So be careful at the end of the year, board secretaries or audit committee secretary, a lot of work needs to be done. Under it,
We lost your voice, Abir.
hello, sorry. It has been muted automatically. So where are we? On the risk management and compliance officer functions. Okay, the risk management and compliance officer function, this needs to be independent, no combined function for the internal auditor or for the compliance officer. So this is a very concerned idea which ESCA has been presented last week. Internal auditor function needs to be independent and it should not be combined with any other function along with the compliance officer as well. So don't do compliance audit in the same function. The last item is on the Article 73. This is a little bit important because it has been like come as a new function, as a new requirement where the auditor now they can provide opinion on the effectiveness of the company's internal control system and compliance. So now you can bring the auditor, external auditor, another, of course, external auditor, independent one, to do all the assessment related to the internal control system and the compliance framework before being audited by the central bank or by ESCA. The opinion that will be provided from the separate or independent auditor is accreditable and it is accepted by the authorities. So this will make the company ready before any auditing that will coming by the authorities later on. And then, of course, there will be a separate report ready and issued and saved by the board secretary as well. This is a very quick brief on the new amendments that has taken place by ESCA. Of course, we will receive questions if you have at the end of the webinar today.
That's great. Thank you, Abir. And without further ado, let us move on to the panel members to introduce themselves. So I'll ask Mohammed to introduce himself and tell us a bit about him and what he brings to the table today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mohammed Wahab. I'm the board secretary for one of the UAE financial institutions. By nature, I'm a corporate banker. I'm not a lawyer. So I know I represent I'm an outlier to this job, but I've been a banker for the past 24 years. I'm a corporate banker and investment banker in many international banks. I ended up in one of the big UAE banks as the head of credit approval and the board secretary for the bank. I hold 2 master's degree in finance and applied finance and banking, and I have an MBA in investment and finance also. So my whole career is majority in finance and banking. And for the past 13 years, I've joined the corporate governance, the board secretarial area, which have been fruitful and added to my trip. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Lamia, please introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Lamia. I am the responsible of corporate governance, and I am appointed as company secretary for Sukun Insurance and its subsidiaries. I've been in this field for the past 5 years, and I have accompanied the company during the evolvement of this function. As the company is an insurance company, so the corporate governance in the insurance sector has been developed by the regulators during the past years, and my role has developed a lot in the company. I am a lawyer, basically. I come from public law background, but in the UAE, I completely find my way within the corporate governance and the company secretariat role. And I'm happy to be with you today and to answer your question.
Thank you, Lamia. And Abir, do you want to just maybe give some more detail around your history and how you ended up in Alkmaar?
Okay. So when I started my career, I started as a judge in the administrative court in Tunisia, which deals with disputes between the government and private parties. There is nothing similar in this part of the world. All the everyone is considered as a private party. There is no duality of jurisdiction, and it's not at all a coincidence that I find myself in the corporate governance area, because it's like a continuity of what I used to do before. Being part of the Council of State and an administrative judge, we used to control the decree to be issued by the government and how much compliant to the law these decrees were. So being in the corporate governance field now, it is something that is much related to my profile and from where I started my career.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, corporate governance is one of those things. It's not an exact science. There are laws and regulations, but there is a lot of grey areas in between. And that's where lawyers, finance experts, and governance professionals are able to tie all that together and provide some form of advice and guidance. Thank you. Abir, will you add something to your background?
I will be brief and quick. I'm coming from insurance company's background as well. I worked for RAK Insurance Company, which is a subsidiary following the bank, RAK Bank. And I am with Hawkama from a couple of months. I loved Hawkama. Actually, it's like joining an accreditable corporate governance institution, which is providing more opportunities for thought leadership, research. Advocacy in the field of corporate governance is really interesting, and hopefully we will be growing, more and bigger in this field as well.
Excellent, thank you. Just recently, the SEC have now implemented their regulations related to greenhouse gases and carbon. And there's a lot of dispute now in regards to some of the politicians bringing cases against the SEC, saying that they've gone too far, whereas some of the activist groups and environmentalist groups are actually saying that the SEC hasn't gone far enough. But I think some of those aspects may have an impact later on in the UAE, and especially if UAE entities are having subsidiaries or doing business with organizations in the US. A bit before that, the European Union put in regulations in regards to carbon emissions and reporting and the disclosure requirements around those elements, and that's those elements will be instated. You've got FRS S1 looking at scope 1 aspects of direct emissions, and S2 related to other aspects of indirect related to the purchase of electricity for the business, and then scope 3, which is the most complicated, which is the other indirect, which tie into the elements of supply chain and end-to-end. And that's going to be the most dominant in regards to compliance. And US has already got some of the most stringent compliance with the Sarbanes-Oxley, and adding this on in regards to financial reporting, this will add an extra layer of complexity in regards to who will audit, how do you verify the data in regards to your supply chain, and then how do you measure your own carbon footprint. And with that in mind, UAE has just recently had the COP28, and we're going to see how they will approach things. So the panel, before we really get into the rest of the questions, what impact will COP28 have on the way UAE companies approach ESG, climate change, and keeping up to speed with international regulations? I don't know who would like to jump in and answer that question. Don't be shy. Mohammed, please go ahead.
Yes, Rob. Concerning this, now the COP28 set the direction for the whole country and gave the direction that the seniors of the company want UAE to follow. So they want UAE not only to be the most advanced on the technological side, but also to be one of the most advanced on the ESG side and the planet preserving side. So this is the image that the seniors of UAE want us to follow. Now, how would companies follow this? There are two directions. Now, I will put the companies in two buckets. The first bucket is the companies that have international presence, and in the financial sector, the companies that tap the market to place funding overseas outside UAE, and the companies that raise funds from outside UAE. This is the first bucket. The other bucket of the companies is the companies that run their business locally inside UAE. Now, the difference in the effect of the reporting and the COP28 on these two, as we internally discussed before this, the companies that have an international presence and have an international business, these guys, they need to follow the requirement of the seniors and the COP28 in their reportings, and to reflect how they follow the new ESG movement of UAE. And they have to place funds, they have to invest, and they have to raise green funds and everything from that in order to match the international requirement and the requirement of the international investors that they are interested in these companies, and they are interested in bringing their business back home here in UAE. So this bucket of companies, they will follow the international standards as it's required. The other bucket is the companies that will be that are running their business locally. I do not think these companies will really follow the international standards, but at the same time, they will try to show that they are doing something, but I'm not expecting too much from the companies that run local business, because for them it would be an additional cost, and these companies are focused on profit. They don't have attachments with the international market, so it will be additional cost for them, but they will have to follow at the end. The regulators will push them to follow, but not like the international bucket. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Big challenges for everyone, I think, globally in regards to ESG and reporting, and having that standardization in regards to transparency and disclosures. And I think that globally has been a challenge, both in Europe and Asia, and now in the Middle East. We'll have to try and pull together and get those elements. So with that in mind, maybe I could ask Lamia, what have been some of the ways you have helped influence and shape the quality, accuracy, and level of detail in your organization's reporting and for the governance and integrated reports presented annually to your shareholders?
The role of the company secretary is crucial in bringing all the stakeholders and ensure their engagement with regards to the integrated report and the reporting in general. Now, this is clear that the regulator has set up the frame and the rules on how we will report on this. Internally, there is a big exercise every year we do among all the departments with all the stakeholders to first to make them aware of this requirement, what is expected from them, to look at what they provide as information, how much accurate, and we validate all this information before we put it together. So it is like a couple of weeks of hard work, continuous hard work between all the stakeholders to make the integrated report at the level expected by the regulator and the market.
Excellent, thank you. And maybe over to Mohammed to share some of his insights in this area.
Concerning if we are discussing the reporting at the UAE level, now we are at the preliminary stage of reporting, especially for the ESG. Most of the listed companies, after the recent regulation and the COP28, I think for the financial market, Mr. Abdelaziz Al Ghourir, the head of the Banks Federation, urged the banks, and they pledged more than 1 billion dirham for investment in sustainable finances, which gives the direction for the whole financial sector and the other sectors in UAE to follow by pledging funds for that. At the reporting level, we are still at the beginning levels. Most of the listed companies, they went to one of the big four consultants to consult them on how to create ESG frameworks and how to integrate this into integrated reports. The main challenge that's facing the listed companies in UAE now is the real implementation and to keep away from the greenwashing. So you do not write something that you do not really do on the ground. This is the first. This is the first part, and coming to that, the second part, which is that these companies started as understanding that they have to buy measuring systems and have to have measuring processes to measure the effect of the products or the sustainable products that they are proposing to the local market and the international market, and to measure the effect on that on the ESG. So this is the second challenge. So these two challenges is to not only to report and have a framework, also to implement. Second is to have a system that measure your real effect relating to the ESG.
Excellent, thank you. From a reporting standpoint, when we look at the corporate governance report and the information provided there, and Nabir gave us an update in regard to some of the regulatory changes. So going forward, we're going to see a lot more detail being added into the governance report and in the integrated reporting. From your aspect, both Mohammed and Lamia, how do you see these being potential challenges, especially given the fact that they're asking for the auditor? The auditor may provide a report in regards to the conflicts, internal controls. Now, I see guidance from the Institute of Internal Audit that shy away from this because the liability and the risk that goes along with somebody providing information, and that's from an internal perspective. But then from an external perspective, if we have the external auditors providing guidance in these areas, are they really going to add value? Question mark. And if we look at how audit firms do their business with companies, they get everyone to sign a management representation letter, which effectively is a get out of jail free, stating that the board and the management have provided all material information, etc., and then taking the liability and moving it back to the company. So do you think we might see more of this if audit firms are being asked to provide aspects in regards to internal control? Because this is part of, anyway, their audit function. When they're providing an audit, they're meant to look at some of the material aspects and some of the critical areas where there are shortcomings from management in regards to internal controls anyway. What are your thoughts?
I can answer you, Rob, on this. The challenge here is with regards to any new requirement, actually. Like when we started corporate governance maybe some years ago, it's not like corporate governance today. It's all about education. It's all about making everyone aware of the requirement first at the board level or internally within the organization. The first challenge you will face is to educate people and to make them understand how important this, and you translate this in their, in their behavior. And they're like, 5 years ago, I remember nobody knows what is corporate governance. And today, everyone, before they do anything, they come to me, they ask questions. What is the right way to do things? What is how we should approach each stakeholder? And I think now it is established. Practices are established. Everyone is aware of his role. Everyone is aware what is expected from him. Even the board. We have done a lot of training. We have briefed them so many times on the requirement on how good corporate governance practices must be implemented within the company. So this comes with time, I think. And now that they will involve external auditors, I think external auditors also, they must have corporate governance specialists. They have people specialists in auditing and tax. So now corporate governance will be a component in their mission. So I think they will need to have corporate governance specialists to give opinion on what the companies are doing.
Right, great point there in regards to that, because having worked for PwC quite a few years ago, within the organization, everyone was a corporate governance expert.
You've gone through this against the...
We've got someone that's not on mute.
Also, Simone is on the end.
Just before we continue, let's try and...
Rob, please unmute yourself.
Yes, there we go. It wasn't me that was talking though in the background. Great. So thank you very much, for those insights, Lamia. Yes, audit firms do need expertise in corporate governance. Most audit firms of the Big Four, in every function, everyone believes that they're a corporate governance expert. And having spoken to many different departments, their understanding of what corporate governance is sometimes very narrow in regards to rules and regulations, rather than looking at the wider aspects and the commerciality that governance is meant to be an enabler rather than a blocker and a compliance tool. So with that said, I'd like to put a question to Mohammed. When he introduced himself, he talked about being a corporate banker. And I wonder how you ended up being the corporate governance officer and the leading board secretariat for the organization you're working?
First thing, thank you, Rob, for that question. And it's a funny story, but I was forced to this field. It was not my choice. I'm a corporate banker and an investment banker. My whole life has been in corporate relationship management and credit management. But during the past 13 years, I've been with my bank as the head of credit approval and board secretary for credit investment and collection, which made me responsible for presenting the credit proposals and the investment proposal, the collection proposals of the bank to the board, which made me seen by my board as a professional banker with the capability of dealing with the board and managing the board affairs. Now, in 2020, the ESCA regulation came in and requested that the board secretary will be independent from management and not to have any two hats. So at that point of time, the board of directors had to choose, were put in a situation where they have to choose an independent board secretary, and I was lucky to be chosen by my board of directors, which they have a future sight for the requirements. When they looked at the requirements that ESCA proposed, they chose to have the board secretary not as a legal person, but more to be a technical person from the business side that understand the core business of the organization. And they thought that this would be helpful for the performance and the governance side. I cannot ignore the huge efforts of my corporate governance, head of corporate governance, which is Miss Allison. She's attending here today. She is the one that was behind what we did in the bank from the corporate governance side. But with her and me as a corporate governance responsible and me at the board secretarial part, we helped each other in the main trick, which is, as we discussed before, the trick is not to write a corporate governance framework. The real trick is to really implement it. So both together, with her efforts and my efforts and insistence on the management, the relationship between management and board, we managed to get the corporate governance as an environment, as a culture, not only ink on paper. So this is the trip. I've learned during these 13 years how to deal and manage the board, how to convince them, sometimes how to stand hard and stop some things that is against corporate governance and against regulation. Also, the relationship inside the organization between the most of the listed companies now, they have the position of corporate governance chief or corporate governance officer, which is writing the corporate governance framework, and with the help of the board secretary, both are implementing this. This relationship is very important. The harmony between these two positions, which is the board secretary and the chief of corporate governance, is very important. This would be fruitful for the company. So this is my trip. I know I'm an outlier, but I'm a fast learner.
I wouldn't say that you're an outlier as such. People get into company secretarial from different walks of life. Some are lawyers, some are accountants, some have background in administration and other elements. So it's really about how understanding the benefits of governance and applying those practically into a business in a way that the framework suits the business, rather than trying to get the business to fit into the framework. And at the same time, making sure you're compliant with the regulations, but also allowing the business enough autonomy to get on with the commercial aspects of what they were put in business for, and the purpose of the organization, which is to grow the profits for investors and to be sustainable. And so with that in mind, really, where do you all see the challenges that would face the board secretary, the governance officer, or the company secretariat division or governance professional when it comes to gathering information and verifying that? Because that's the most challenging part. The board expect the board secretary or company secretary to verify all the data that comes in and then collate it together and provide some form of guidance. Where do you see the challenges? We'll maybe ask Abir to provide some of her thoughts, and then go to Lamia and then to Mohammed.
Honestly, Rob, the challenge is not in gathering. The challenge is to convince people that this is important. At the time they are convinced that what you do is very important for the organization, for the reputation of the company, and you give that good understanding and you convince people that this is important, the task will be easier, much easier. This is, for me, that was the first challenge I have faced, is to convince people and to bring them at that level of understanding on how important this is for the company. This is for the company. After that, gathering the information and put them together. First, we are following the templates the regulators are providing us. So this is repetitive. It has become a repetitive exercise. But getting the right information from the source, that was my first challenge. But over the year, it has become like an established practice. It has become normal. Everyone just provide his information at the right time, and I put them together with no problem, with no issues.
I think you're very privileged there and to have people that are working so easily with you and taking the guidance and the education, because I think that's an important aspect. True. Yeah.
Rob,
what are your thoughts?
just,
yes.
Yeah, I will just add something to Lamia and Mohammed. You see, the regulations are greatly now developing, and it's more stricter than before. So we are all going to going to that road of implementing the regulations and then making everything stable at the company. So the leading to a greater transparency and disclosures requirements for all the companies. You need a very strong board behind you who is really trained, independent, effective, educated. He understands regarding the corporate governance regulations, authorities requirements, trust the board secretary with decisions that they are making and bringing to the board. The decision making at the company is the board. That's why I always focus, even during my previous journey at the insurance, I was really focusing on the board to be more transparent, more informative, more knowledgeable regarding what's going on and how to improve the process of the company. Like now, even now, moving to Hawkama, it was like a huge step from being inside the organization and then now leading from outside. Like being at Hawkama, it is like those professional team who are tasked with developing and implementing the training programs, conducting research studies and providing the guidance to the organizations. All these things that has been implemented to the organizations, it is really to make the board more stronger. So if you want the company to be strong and effective, make the board strong.
Excellent point. Make the board strong and empower the board secretary and give them authority to be able to reach out and be able to talk as the voice of the board within the business. Mr. Mohammed.
Now, Rob, if you allow me, I'll take this from a different point of view. Now, most of the board of the directors and management of the listed companies, they are happy to be transparent and to report. The main problem is coming from the financial market, DFM and ADX, and the investors. Now, always the board and the management, they are trying to be transparent, but they are cautious with that because at the end of the day, majority of the listed companies or all of them are working for profit. So they are afraid to be too much transparent or put too much information that would negatively affect the share price of the company or the value of the company. At the real end, the share price is the value of the company. They are there to ensure the growth of the value of the company. The problem is coming that in the GCC in general, the financial markets and the investors are inefficient markets, which means that the prices of the share price of the companies, they move for very simple reasons, and sometimes they are moving for no reason. This is because of the maturity of the investor itself. So to answer your question, where do I see this going in 3 to 5 years? I think there will be big reforms in the financial markets in the GCC. So these markets would educate the investors and move to be efficient markets like the UK and the US. If we have an efficient market that do not move or affect the value of the company unless the information is really sensitive or market sensitive, then at this point of time, I expect that the boards and the management of the companies will have no hesitation to be 100% transparent and report everything. So from where I come is the problem is not in the companies. The problem is with the investor himself, because the investor is affecting my company value. And as management and board, I'm there to preserve the value. So I'm trying to hide non-necessary information that would affect the price because these guys are not mature enough or the market is not efficient. So I think the market within the 3 to 5 years will be efficient markets. Regulators will push for that so companies can achieve and adhere to the strict regulation of the international market concerning the transparency and disclosure.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mohammed. That's a great different lens to look at things. When we think about other countries and jurisdictions with more mature capital markets, we definitely see that transparency and disclosure, if done in the right way, even with bad messaging, if it's presented in the correct way with a remediation and timeline plan, that will sometimes have the positive correlation in regards to the share price and people investing into those companies. Fear shouldn't come in really, because ultimately, if we think about where a lot of hedge funds have made their money, they look for organizations that have a great product or services, who have a weak board or have weak internal controls and governance, and they go in and invest heavily, put their people on the board and encourage driving forward good governance and improving internal controls, and then driving up the share price and providing additional revenue. Then normally in 5-7 years, they'll exit from the business having made a massive profit. So they see the value when we see how hedge funds and asset managers approach these things. They're looking for opportunities. And I think GCC, as you rightly said, Mohammed, it's a developing or emerging market that is trying to attract foreign direct investment. And now we're coming in line. We've just come recently off the grey list, which is fantastic news. Great clap for UAE on that step forward. As we see further steps forward for the UAE, we will see it becoming a more attractive and the wider GCC more attractive to foreign direct investment, which then drives forward the whole aspect of competitive governance and people trying to be more transparent and disclosing in a timely way, in a way that provides real, true facts. So excellent. We're shortly coming to the Q&As, but before we do that, I would like to ask 2 questions. One to Lamia, which is, how has Halkema's Certified Board Secretaries Program helped you? And one to Abir, which is, how does working for Halkema, a non-profit organization and corporate governance institute, differ working for a regulated or listed organization? And then for Mohammed, maybe you could talk along the lines of this area of collaboration that you talked about with Miss Allison and how you're pulling together resource and expertise within the organization to try and get governance excellence. So Amia first, Abir second, and Mohammed third, please.
First of all, I would like to thank Hawkama for that workshop I had to go through for the certification for board secretary. It was one of the things that I have enjoyed the most. The quality of the ladies who were giving us the workshop, and the interaction we had, it was of a great added value. I had the corporate governance side, and I was looking for the company secretarial side, actually. And the workshop was very, very much interesting for me with regards to that function of board secretary, board meeting preparation, board meeting agenda, all these elements around how to manage successful board meeting, what you should do, what you should not do. That was of a great added value for me, to be honest. This is what like I'm so grateful for Hawkama for that workshop. It was really very interesting.
Excellent. Yeah, I've been to one of the days of one of those programs. When I first moved to the UAE in 2009, I went to Hawkama's initial board secretary program. Very interesting. Thank you. Abir.
I end up with Hawkama maybe because I really love regulations and corporate governance. I was forcing that in my previous company, like, this needs to be done. So working for Corporate Governance Institute, actually, it's like opposite of a regulated or listed organization. At Hawkama, it is an institute which provide more opportunities for leadership, research, advocacy in the field of corporate governance. The main focus of the institution is to promote the best practice of corporate governance, ethics, compliance across a wide range of industries. So it's not only listed. And then this requires really a deep understanding of regulatory requirements in industry standards and merging all these trends in governance from all over the world. On the other hand, working for a regulated listed organization or company, it involves more daily operational responsibilities like ensuring compliance with regulatory requirements, managing risk, reporting to stakeholders, managing the executives along with the board. So it's like different perspective, but both roles are really very essential in ensuring the success and the sustainability of any organization at the end. So I really loved both.
Excellent. Thank you. Mohammed, last but not least.
Last but not least, yes. Our trip in the company started with governance in 2011. At that point of time, governance in UAE was not much of that importance. It was something that you have on the shelf as a governance framework or as a governance policy, but the real implementation was not there. The real implementation started in UAE when the central bank came in 2019 and adopted the governance regulation and arranged this. It was in line with ESCA governance regulation at that point of time, and gave a grace period of implementation of 2 years till 2022. Now, this is where really the financial sector and the financial market started picking up and looking for really having a governance environment inside them. Me and Miss Allison started at that point of time in 2020, where we started. It was the only two of us, that the only two persons that believe in governance in the organization. Now, the challenge in front of us, as I told you, were not really writing the governance framework. The main challenge was, number one, how to implement what we would write. And what we are writing should be in harmony with the company processes. So now what we needed to do at that point of time is to embed the governance inside the real processes. Our company is a 1975 company. So it's a very old company. They have their processes. It's very rigid processes. In order to penetrate this and have the corporate governance embedded, it was like a surgery. So what we did is I used at that point of time also Alison was new to the company. So we collaborated together, me as a person there for more than 10 years in the company, understand the process, understand how things run inside, understand my board, understand my management. And she as a governance expert, we collaborated together in order to write something that would really work for our organization. And this was stage one. In 2021, started the real implementation, where we started convincing the management and the board at the same time that why and how can we add value to the processes and the bank, and that we are not a cost center. We can add value to the process of the bank by implementing governance. Yes, we will spend some money, which is not a big thing, but you will make out of that. And we started showing to them how this would benefit with the stakeholders, and specifically the international stakeholders. When we tap the international market, how these things would help the company to raise funds and deploy funds in these areas. And we went through the journey with the board and with the management, where they understood the process and they helped us in implementing it with all the departments. So now, while we are talking, governance runs in the blood of each and every department and the processes and manuals and SOPs of that department. The second help came from the central bank, which at the same point of time, it was beneficial that the central bank awareness of the implementation started elevating. So now, while we are talking, the central bank is doing 2 audits to any bank. They are doing the usual operational audit, and there is the governance audit. So you receive on an annual basis a specific team auditing you for governance implementation, and they are going in the details. And this has helped us that central bank observations for the banks in UAE is like, you have to do this. It's not non-negotiable. So this also helped us. So the areas where we couldn't achieve progress on them, the central bank helped us by pushing on them that we need to show progress on that. So this completed the picture, and the trip was concluded by having a real governance environment, not having a governance framework. Now we have a governance environment inside the organization.
MashaAllah to you, Mohammed, and to Miss Alison for the work that you've done there. Fantastic to hear about the journey of all of you on the panel. I just wanted to open up the floor to any questions. I see a hand up. It looks like John Totil has got his hand up. I'm not sure if people are able to unmute themselves, but
Can I unmute myself, Rob? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly, John. I can see you as well. Hello, sir.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Maybe I should switch my camera off. Rob, I had
You look amazing.
I had a couple of questions which are probably related. And firstly, I'd just like to say thanks very much to all of you for a brilliant presentation, really helpful, insightful, and encouraging debate. So thanks for that. My 2 questions on the reporting side of it. And the first is the role of ratings agencies, particularly for listed companies, and the engagement which the company secretary and other key stakeholders in the business should have with ratings agencies, because they play a huge part in making sure that the governance is effective. The ratings can directly impact the how the business can perform and its perception in the market. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how people engage with ratings agencies. And my second question is really about the preparation for the integrated report and the governance report and the ESG report at the end of the year, because it's as you know, no good just coming to the end of the year and suddenly thinking, oh, we need to make a whole bundle of disclosures, and you haven't actually done the work during the year to make those disclosures. So again, it's better understanding the role of the company secretary during the year to make sure that the things that need to be disclosed in these year-end reports are actually being done and coordinated and are effective, so that at the year end you can actually put your hand on your heart and say, yes, we had a process and a methodology for making sure we have effective governance disclosures, and obviously working with key stakeholders, your head of ESG, head of finance, etc. So these are my two main questions. My final throwaway comment is the how come our slides I really liked, and I just wondered if there's any chance of getting a copy of those, because they looked fantastic to me. So I've said enough, Rob, but these are my observations.
Thank you. Anyone from the panel that would like to answer those questions? I think, Lamia, you had already spoken around the second question, which was how you work with your organization and pull together the information.
Yes, it's the reporting at the end of the year. It's not just something we do at the end of the year. It's the entire year work. Like at the beginning of the year, we set up our calendars for everything, and we follow a process for the entire year. And as I told you, if in your organization you are able to establish those processes and those practices, everyone is aware of the timelines, of what is expected from him to provide as information. And at the end of the year, it's just a matter of gathering the information. And if people are aware of these timelines and they are aware of what they have to provide, I think it's not an issue at all. In my company, at least, we have established those processes. We have established those. The timelines are very clear to everyone. So yes, at the end of the year, we gather the information together, but it's an entire year work. Like it's continuous work.
Yes. Thank you. Yep.
All over the year.
If you allow
Yes,
me,
perfect.
Rob, just to add as well, the
Yes.
integrated report, as per SK regulation, it has a specific, criteria and specific reports that it needs to be merged inside with it. So let's say like the board report or the auditor report, financial statement, this has been already, it will be approved at the beginning of the year for the, like, because those are annually at the end of the year will be ready and then approved in Q1. The integrated report is not required to be approved from authority. This is the very main important idea for the companies. What is required to be approved is the financial statements separate, the audit report separate, the corporate governance report separate. So these things, once you are approving all these things, you can merge them in one integrated report to be issued at least 10 days before the AGM. So you have the first 4 months of the year to start incorporating all these reports in one.
Thank you. For the first question, my understanding is normally it would be the CEO and the chairman driving discussions with the investor relations to try and get the rating agencies to understand the business. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if Lamia or Mohammed, you are speaking directly to rating agencies.
No, actually, it's not with me. Rating agencies, we have a dedicated resource to speak to the rating agencies. Of course, we provide whatever information they require from our, like, under our scope, but it is under another function in the organization.
Thank you. Excellent. Are there any other questions from the floor? Anyone that has pressing desire, or if you don't want to turn your mic on, or is that somebody asking a question?
Hi, sorry. Yes, I just have a follow-up question on the rating agencies question. Traditionally, would that fall somewhat under the board secretaries or the company secretaries remit?
from my understanding and from working with and advising organizations, no. But again, a company secretary or board secretary's role can actually be quite broad. So it could be an aspect of their duties or responsibilities, but ultimately the leader of the organization is whom? It's at the board level, it's the chairman or chairwoman, and at the organizational day-to-day responsibility, it's the CEO. And that's my understanding. Any other questions from the floor? I'm mindful that we're already over our time by a few minutes. So maybe we could take one more question. Okay, no additional questions. So from my side, I would love to thank the great esteemed panel members. Thank you for your insights. Really appreciate all of your time and for sharing with us so freely. And from my side, it's been a pleasure working with the three of you. But we can't forget the people that are behind the scenes doing the work, to Sadia and to Arij, who have beautifully organized the webinar today and dealt with the marketing. So I'd like to thank you, panel members, but also I'd like to thank each and every one of the participants for their time as well, for joining us. If you do have questions, please feel free to drop an email into Sadia or Arij, and we can answer any of your questions offline. We thank you one and all, and we hope you've enjoyed this session.
Yeah.